Hello and welcome back to another episode of City Skylines, where we are building the city of Delta Coast. I'm really excited for today's episode because we are going to take care of a few really interesting things. I'm looking at our farm and it looks like we're on the verge of leveling up, so I'm going to let that happen before we go any further. With that, we are now at a 4-star farm, and we have a couple options available to us. Let's take a look at our industry area and see what we need to do in order to level up to a 5-star farm. Well, first, we need to continue producing resources. That's just going to happen over time, and I think we're making decent progress towards that goal. Regarding the worker count of 800 that we require, getting to 800 actually really means just filling up 2/3 of the available worker slots. So I'm thinking that we can actually avoid doing anything too drastic in this area, and as long as we start providing more and more workers to this area, we will hit 5 stars, no problem. One thing I am going to do is consider some auxiliary buildings that I hadn't placed last episode, and these are, in addition to the farm main building, the workers' barracks, and the farm maintenance building. I usually like to place 2 or 3 of each of these buildings because they provide nice bonuses. So the workers' barracks will provide work efficiency of 5% each, so I think I'll place 3 of them. And additionally, the farm maintenance building will increase storage capacity of our industry buildings by 5%. This is a much more expensive building compared to the barracks, so I think I'm going to just try to place 2 of them. And that looks good to me. We now have improved efficiency and improved storage, so if we don't pay any attention to this industry area at all this episode, I'm fairly confident that we will reach our 5-star goal. What I'm much more interested in today is focusing on this area. There are some things that I've been wanting to take care of for a while, and we're going to take care of those today. The main things that we're going to take care of is going to be removing a lot of the pollution from this area by addressing the landfills that have been filling up, and we're going to kind of start building some residential to finish out this neighborhood, and we're also going to consider some transportation options. I really like the idea of not only building out this neighborhood, but also making it really easy for our citizens to travel down to this part of town as well. So that will be kind of the key in this episode to getting to that point of having 800 workers. We're already making great progress towards that goal, so I think that what we plan to do is going to be totally reasonable. The reason I'd like to do that is at our 7,500 population milestone, we will unlock the incineration plant, which is going to be essential for us to actually start to process this garbage. I would like to hit that milestone as early as possible, and to get there, I'm going to need to place some additional residences. So let's first focus on building out this neighborhood. Now, I do have a thought, which is I really like this collector over here. It has great highway access, and I think it makes sense to have a collector that parallels this railroad and crosses the river over here. I think that a collector over here will be one of the key ways that folks access this area, which I think we'll expand to in the future. So I'm going to build a collector that crosses the river, not going to do anything over there today, and then I'm just going to, fill in the neighborhood as it makes sense, linking up with that collector at key points, and establishing our neighborhood. So I'm going to do all of that now. And I'm going to pause right now because it looks like something interesting is going on, and it's going to take me a little bit to explain. So what we have is a little bit of a fire that's broken out in our city park area. Now, fires that happen to buildings that have road access will be taken care of by our fire trucks, and those are dispatched by our fire stations and firehouses. Now, one thing that we currently lack coverage on is fire coverage on our basically park area or industry area buildings. Sorry, I think I misspoke. Really what I'm trying to say is anytime we're placing custom assets within a zone that do not have road access, such as a park or a zoo or a campus in the future, we're going to have to put out these fires using a different mode of fire prevention. And what that looks like is we will first have to build a fire helicopter depot and then build fire watch towers to help put out those fires. So I don't know if we are in trouble or not based on our inability to place fire watch towers. So we might actually just see our entire city park burn down. Now, I also don't have enough money to afford the fire helicopter depot, so let's check out our loans. I'm thinking that if I pay this now for $8,000, I can then take out a loan for $20,000. So that gives us what we need. So I'd at least like to get this fire helicopter depot placed. Now I'm thinking that this area over here is going to be the perfect area for it because it can live alongside other city services that are non-toxic to the environment and kind of essential for our city to be healthy service-wise. So if I place that there, I think that would be helpful. Now, what it will do is, I believe it will dispatch firefighting helicopters, but they will be unable to combat the fires inside of the park until we have the fire watch towers. So I think what will happen... Oh, I think I'm totally wrong. Okay, so I just saw it work on the park assets, which is great. So I'm going to have to learn more about that and figure out why that happened the way it did. I think maybe the fire watch tower will prevent like forest fires from spreading and reaching our city. So I was totally wrong. I just learned something today, and we're actually fine. So we were able to put it out in time, and the building didn't burn down. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to go back to building out this area over here. Alright, so we just built that neighborhood. We made some key connections to that collector, and we built some paths with water. So what I'm going to start doing is meeting some of this residential demand in here, really with the goal of getting beyond the 7,500 population milestone. So I'm not going to go too crazy with it, but I am going to throw down some houses. And what I'm thinking is that this right here would be another great area for a city park. What I'm not going to do is spend as much time focusing in on it because we already have all of the park assets available to us. We can really just plop down that park and put down, basically fulfill all our entertainment value and see it grow to a 5-star park over time. And to be honest, if it doesn't grow to 5 stars, I'm also okay with that. So we will let that park, grow over time, and I'm going to build it, but not spend too much time focusing on it. But I will, however, again, fulfill that residential demand first. And maybe I'll continue this trend of building out some commercial in here, and I don't want to get super aggressive with it, so I will stop at this point right here. One thing I'd like to be conscious of is the current pollution that's in our city, so I'm going to be really careful not to build any residences past, about this mark right here. So I think before we build anything else in this area, we will have to take care of that pollution. And when I say anything else, I really just mean residences, because our commercial properties and other city buildings definitely have a higher toleration for pollution. And I think I will add some commercial zoning along the collectors, because that will start to see some traffic. I'm just doing what I think feels right. And that's about as far as I'll go. I will revisit our junctions. Stop sign, light, stop sign, stop sign. Sounds good to me. And we are just about over that hump. Okay, so we've reached the milestone that I wanted to get to today, and that gave us a bunch of new things to consider. We have a lot of new policies. We are able to zone high-density residential and commercial as well as offices. I'm not going to zone any of that today, however, I will start talking about offices briefly. And really the big thing that we've unlocked that I'm excited for is the incineration plant, because this will allow us to start actually processing garbage instead of just landfilling it, so we're going to place those right away. Additionally, we have a university that we can place. In the future, we'll build a full campus area using the campus DLC, and just like our city park and farm and other industries, we'll level it up to a 5-star campus. That campus will provide university-level education. But today, I do want to get some students flowing through the educational pipeline and at least receiving that university-level education. So I will also be placing a university, just so that in the future, we do have some students that are educated. The reason that plays into the office type zoning is we do need university level students to fulfill our offices. They'll require university level education to be able to work there. One trick though is that office zones are able to fulfill our industry demand. So moving forward, we're probably not going to need much of that dirty industry, and we'll build specialized industrial zones as well as offices. That was a lot, so what I'm going to do right now is really make some moves in this area. We are already seeing a lot of these factories become abandoned because they didn't have enough workers. I'm totally cool with that. I'm going to go ahead and dezone all of this industry. And my guess is that our city won't really care that much about it because there's a lot of jobs available over there. What I want to do is start emptying our landfill sites. So I'm going to use that button to start emptying it, and I'm going to use this button to start emptying that. Now, if we look at our garbage processing capacity, we are producing quite a bit and we are not able to keep up. So if we do nothing, we are going to basically have trash problems. What I'm going to do is place incineration plants right next to our landfills. Place one right there and one right there. These will start to process that garbage, and we'll be in a better spot as a result. So let's look at our overall capacity. Fantastic. So because they're right next to each other, the landfill will basically just bring trucks and dump them into the incineration plants, and we will relocate these in the future to likely over here and in our industry area as well, just so we have good coverage across the whole map. But for now, I really just have the goal of getting this burned down as quickly as possible. So I'm interested to see, how quickly this fills up. So, it's processing fairly fast. It's got quite a bit in the garbage reserves from the landfill, but that's helping it empty. So it's just a waiting game at this point. It might take some time, and I'm okay with that, but that's just how it works. One other thing we talked about was the university. Now, right now, this is still a dirty area, but it's going to clean up, and I think putting a university over here would be a really great move. So I think I might go with, kind of a central location. I think I kind of like the idea of maybe taking out this road, building this facing the path, and then putting road behind it. I think that, looks a little bit better and makes sense. So we already have some students there, which is fantastic. And over time, that's going to give some students a high education, which will help them fulfill office jobs. Now, like I mentioned, I'm not going to add any residential zoning in here just yet, so I'm going to hold off on that. But we can maybe take care of a couple other city services, such as parks and plazas. And you know what? I probably should consider additionally elementary education. We don't have any in this area, so I want to take care of that before that becomes a problem. I feel good with that. So I know I'd mentioned a lot of stuff that I want to do in here, but it is a waiting game before these landfills empty, and I have some plans for the rest of the episode to start to deal with transit, which is going to be a little expensive, and I want to make sure I have enough money for it. So before I do anything else, I'm going to let this simulate so we can gather some money and see how our city evolves to see if any glaringly obvious problems come up. One thing I'm just now catching is that we're seeing quite a few issues regarding worker education. We require the blue icon usually indicates that we don't have enough folks with a high school level education. So this is kind of telling us what the problem is. We did set the policy over here called schools out, where folks will prefer to work instead of getting an education. But even considering that, we have far more students eligible than we have capacity for. So what I want to do right now is place another high school. I don't think I want to place it in this area just because we do have that policy, so folks in that area are less likely to be concerned with getting a high school education. I think what makes sense is placing it over here. Yeah, I think I'm going to place it over here and actually put it pretty close to the university, just because I imagine those two uses would have some level of synergy, even if that's not actually simulated in the game. So, as with other things in the game, this is just a thing we're going to have to wait out. And, there are... that is going to fill up over time, so that's great. We already are exceeding that 1,000 limit. So, I think that will resolve itself in time. So I'm going to go back to simulating so that we can accumulate enough money for our transit that we're going to build. One helpful thing that we can do that I haven't actually done yet is change our taxes. Now, this is a fairly simple change. The mechanic behind it's very simple, but we can adjust how much we tax each type of zoning. Now, through playing the game, I've kind of come to find out the magic number seems to be 12%, where the default in the game is 9. If you don't change it, it will stay there. And if you move the taxation beyond 12%, your citizens will be unhappy to the point of complaining. If you add it to, or change it to 12, I've noticed no one really complains about it ever, and you make more money as a result. So I forgot what the weekly income was before, but 13, 14 seems much higher than it was previously. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I would like to see that continue to sim. Now that we have a bit more money, I think I'm in a good spot. I am going to, however, decide to place another incineration plant. We are now way over the processing capacity that we require, but this is just going to help further accelerate burning down through that landfill. I really just want to get rid of these this episode, and the only way we're going to do that is by processing garbage. Before I move on to transportation, I think I'd like to add some more residential just because it doesn't look like the pollution will really affect this zone all that much. So I think adding that will help give us some additional income. Maybe some over here too. That seems reasonable. And one way that we can help combat any of that pollution would be by placing a hospital. We currently have 2 medical clinics, but we do not have a hospital, and hospitals really give us a significant boost to overall health. So I'm considering that, as well as considering the fact that this area is polluted as it is, so this is really going to be a boon to helping make sure that the health of our citizens in this area is doing fine. So I think placing it in a spot where it has really good access to main roads like this is going to be smart. And just like that, we are back down to having no money at all. I promise those were the last changes that I planned to make before placing any transit, so I am going to simulate once again before we actually do anything. Okay, now that we're in a good spot, I will start to move on to our transportation and give you an idea of what I've been thinking of. So in our transportation menu, we have several options. The thing I want to start with first is going to be our trams. Trams are really neat. They're really effective because they are a very high capacity form of transit, though they are unique in that they require special roads. You basically have to have roads with tram lines. So that's fine. We can take care of that. I'm going to first map out visually what I think I'd like the path to be. And I think what makes sense is using this main corridor, this main collector, going along here, and then at this point, because we're approaching the arterial, start to loop back into where we originated from. So we don't have a neighborhood built out here, but imagine there was a local road that took you over here and then brought you back to the shoreline. And then we could have the tram follow the shore, go to those residences, stop along the park, circle back, and then through this collector make its way back over here. So that would be a nice smooth path. We would have to take care of this rotary and just change it to a collector-collector intersection. I think that makes sense, and we'll do that as we start to lay down the tram track. The first thing we'll need, though, before we lay down track is called a tram depot. And usually for our various forms of transportation, such as a bus, we will need a depot. And that's just where the vehicles are stored when they're not in use. So definitely makes sense. So if we place this right here, we can start to see where, you see that kind of purple segment of road. That is a tram-enabled track. And this blinking icon tells us that we have some tram track, but the connection just dies at some point. So we're going to go through and upgrade our roads to be tram-enabled and kind of match that rough pattern that I talked about. I had to do a little bit of extra work over here just because it didn't like the fact that I intersected with a curved road. Stuff like that happens, but I think we're out of the woods there. And now over here, we basically can't have tram tracks intersect with a railroad. Unfortunately, I do not have trains unlocked yet, so I'm just going to have to delete this railroad and forget about it for now. I do like the location that it's in, so we will replace that with an above grade crossing, aka, a bridge, but for now I'm gonna have to just leave that as is. And over here, I don't think it would be realistic. I don't even know if I can. I bet I could build some tram tracks going through the rotary, but I want to revisit the rotary in general. We have a rotary over here, it's working well. I want to have a local neighborhood over here, and for that we will want collector access. So I'm actually going to take a mulligan on the change I made a couple episodes ago and get rid of this arterial in favor of a collector, and then just have a collector intersection over here instead of a rotary. And just like that, our farm leveled up to level 5. We didn't have to do a single thing. I'm not going to revisit it today. There are some changes we're going to make and some improvements in the future, but we did what we set out to do, and we didn't have to do much this episode. So it's now making money for us and providing 989 jobs in our city, which is phenomenal. So we'll let that continue to run, and I'm just really proud of what we've built. Okay, and as I discussed, although we don't know what this neighborhood is going to look like, we'll probably do something interesting in there in the future. Right around here is where I would like to end the tram line, on the collector at least, and deviate into this neighborhood over here. So I am going to build some tram tracks. We can film this neighborhood in the future, totally not a big deal, but we'll stick to hugging the shoreline and kind of just seeing how that goes. So, you know, if we build this out straight, I think it would be reasonable to have in the future. I'm just using this to kind of guide me. In the future, we'll have a local road kind of coming out over here. I don't know, something like that. That will create, a little bit of a local neighborhood that borders the arterial. And then that way over on this side, we'll just have the tram tracks continue to hug the shore and framing this neighborhood that we'll build in the future. And we definitely want it to meet up with this existing road. And now we can just go back to adding in those tracks on the existing road. Now I have a choice here, which would be to come back out to the collector. I could do that, or I could stick within this local neighborhood. What I'm thinking for this area is that maybe we'll add some density or add some high-value destinations. So instead of bringing traffic to the collector, maybe we can actually stay within this vicinity over here, which I think would make sense. So I'm just going to bring it down through here instead. And then we got to meet up with the collector at some point. So if we actually go back into our tram menu, you can see overall what the tram line looks like. We have this overall loop where we will add tracks, and then we have our depot, which is linked up, and that's we need that connection so that trams have a place to start. So now what we have to do is configure a tram line. So what I'm going to do is on the side of the road, on the right side of the road to start, create tram stops at destinations I think make sense, and that is where the trams will stop, and we'll create a complete loop. Then we'll do the exact same but in reverse, because it makes sense to have on the same line or on the same track. It makes sense to have two kind of opposite lines, one going one way, one going the other. That way, it's really easy for folks to get to their destinations without hopping on a train and then riding out the whole thing just to get a couple, 100 feet. So I think I did a poor job explaining that, but you'll see what I mean in a minute. So I'm going to do maybe every few blocks. I'm not going to go crazy, but I think something like 3 or 4 blocks is probably the appropriate length. And I'm going to try to make the stops be as close to these paths or road intersections as possible, just because that's a great spot for people to get off and be able to travel through our pedestrian network. Now I don't know what this neighborhood is going to look like yet. I don't want our tram stopping really over there all that much. I'm going to create one stop just as a reminder to add in more stops in the future, but I'm going to kind of resume stopping over here where we do have an established neighborhood. Stopping right by our future park would be desired. Okay, I think that works. I'm going to do the same thing in reverse. And yeah, again, I didn't do a great job explaining it, but imagine we only had one route and it brought you that way. Well, this way, if you need to get somewhere over here, you can just hop on and then be routed that way without having to go through the whole thing. One thing that's neat is now that we completed the line, we have trams coming from the tram depot, and they're going to start their service. So we'll check up on that once we complete this second line. Awesome, so we've completed 2 lines. We can go into inspect our tram menu, and we have 16 stops each. Vehicles will be sent out, and it looks like we'll have a total of 10 vehicles each. Sounds great. We'll start there, and we'll just call this the Old Town Line. The reason I'm calling it Old Town Line is really this area we've built out so far is kind of our old town. In the future, it's going to remain, low density, and we're not going to develop it up into a robust downtown, but it'll still be a nice booming area that is a desirable place to live. So that's kind of what I refer to as Old Town. In the future, we'll break out into this area, somewhere by the Delta, potentially even, this area over here, this area, and build out a really, really rich downtown. And that'll be the difference between, downtown and Old Town. So what I do want to do is inspect the trams a bit further just to see how things are going. It's going to take some time for it to really ramp up. What I'm looking for is locations where people are gathering. It looks like we already have some nice hotspots where people are gathering for some service, and let's see how our other line is doing. Wow. So this spot right there, 146 people stopping. That's phenomenal. Those are 146 people that would otherwise usually be taking vehicles of their own. So one of the benefits I didn't discuss of transit is it takes vehicles off the road. And a huge, huge, huge part of this game is just managing traffic. So if we can do that effectively by offsetting vehicles traffic with public transit, then we're doing a good job. I am noticing that we're having some trams skip right over some stops, and I think the reason that's happening is before it actually goes into service, it's going to do a full lap just for fun. Don't know why that is, but that's some behavior I've noticed in other playthroughs as well. I want to see if this has any people on it. It doesn't have any passengers yet, so I'm kind of curious, when we'll see our first pickup happen. Do we have any trams coming back? This is probably our first one. And yeah, it hasn't picked up any passengers. So I think we're going to continue to see it go through the neighborhood before it actually picks up its first customer, probably over here. And we have quite a bit of people piling up. So I'm hoping that we see some passengers get picked up. I think this is the one that's going to do it for us. Cool, 90 passengers. So we are seeing some activity already, which is great. We're not going to go crazy watching this, but we will come back to this in time and see how that goes. Back at our landfill sites, we have 29% full and 53% full. So this is for sure a slow burn. I don't know any other way to speed it up other than going really crazy with incinerator plants. I'm going to lose money because I will delete these in the future, but to me, the money is definitely worth it. So I'm going to just go crazy and place one more each. And we'll just have to deal with that, and we'll relocate them and delete them in the future. I think that'll really accelerate getting rid of those landfills. This one has a lot more, so I'm just placing that one over here. One thing I can do while we're waiting is build out the city park. I'm going to speed through it because everything we're placing is stuff we've seen before. So, I'm not going to build on the river just because I think we can reach our desired entertainment without building park piers. So I'm going to place pretty much everything else and make sure that I, at a minimum, reach the desired entertainment value. So I'm going to go through that all right now. Okay, so one thing I'm interested in is the entertainment value we need to get to 5 stars eventually. Again, I just want to set it and forget it and not really worry about it. It looks like I can't see that, so I wonder kind of what the expectation is. I think we're just gonna have to figure it out level by level. So at some point I'll come back to this and check to see if we, have the entertainment value that we need. One thing I will do in the short term is add a little bit of scenery just to make this look a little bit nicer. Okay, so our city park looks okay. Again, not a great landscape architect. Plopping down some trees definitely filled it in, so I'm happy with that. Our entertainment value is huge. We're definitely going to get some visitors over time. I think we can add on the recycle garbage feature. I do want to check out the land value, and fantastic. Our land value is just doing great. This is a really, really desirable part of the city to live in, and it shows. For reference, this is kind of the color that we're going for, which is the really, really light green. I think it's going to get even lighter than that, but that's roughly what we're going for. If we simulate, I think you can see some houses leveling up. None right now, but yeah, like right over there, there's a big cluster of those houses leveling up, which I think is great. So, we're really, really lacking worker education right now. Just let's revisit our educational pipeline. It's decent, but we need more students to be flowing through, so we just are at a point where we have a lot of workers that are available, but they aren't well educated by the high school. So that's a thing that will take time to iron out. I'm fine with that. And our landfill is doing great. We're at 1% there and 35% there. So once that is free, we can remove the landfill, relocate the incineration plants, and then start doing some meaningful zoning in this area. We do still have lots of pollution, but that will clear up over time as we remove these dirty uses out. So let's just wait until this is good. Our first landfill is empty, so we're going to delete it. That was a very proud moment. I'm really thrilled with that. For now, let's relocate these incinerator plants right by the other landfill just to speed that along. And, that's just a matter of time before that completes. I do want to relocate this recycling center over to this area. And I've thought about it, and I think that We definitely want some trash collection to support our industry area just because it definitely generates a lot of trash. I'm going to build a small kind of utility road right here, and this is where we can place our, trash collection. I think it makes sense to move a recycling center over there, as well as an incineration plant. So I am going to take one of these plants and move it over there. And the way that the industry areas work, I believe, is instead of collecting trash, instead of dealing with police demands throughout the entire area, all of those are represented by the main buildings. So we won't ever see, this fruit field, for example, have trash problems. And that's because all of the trash, I believe, I could be wrong, but all of the trash needs are concentrated in the main building. That's kind of the purpose that it serves. So I think that having these garbage collection facilities by the main building is what we want to do. And it looks like we're having some water issues. And we do have water coverage, so that must mean that our water capacity isn't high enough. I believe our budget is just low. We had previously reduced it, so bumping it up to 100, I think we're in a good spot. So we don't need to touch that for a while or build any new buildings. That's fantastic. So let's see how this area is cleaning up. Still pretty dirty. I'm really hesitant to build any residences there just yet because they're going to hate that. Even if they have adequate health coverage, it's probably going to be a really bad idea to, put them over there. One thing I can do to supplement the health coverage, though, is maybe place some different things, like maybe a community pool. It gives a small boost to the health capacity of the citizens. So I think that's something that we would want to put in a spot like this, definitely. Other things that we can place in this area would be other amenities that won't care about pollution just yet, so we can start placing them. I think something like park, playground. I like the idea of having a playground right by the hospital. Just make the hospital a little bit happier. There's some other things we can consider placing. Let's check them out. Maybe a basketball court. And I don't want to go crazy. We'll revisit that in the future. Our landfill is still emptying, so that's great. I'm going to check out our tram. We're carrying quite a few passengers, and it looks like we aren't having any issues with, the vehicle capacity. None of these are full, and we aren't, missing passengers along stops. And none of these stops seem too overburdened. There's this one stop with, it looks like 86 passengers, but, that's not bad at all. This one, 45. I think it's the same stop. That's just a popular area of town, I guess. It's kind of in the center of everything. So that's not concerning at all. And in fact, I think the tram is doing a fantastic job. One last thing we can consider for today's episode before we end is another form of transit, which is the bus. The bus is very simple. It's simpler than the tram. It, similar to the tram depot, requires a bus depot. So I can place that, really anywhere that has road access. I think right there is a good spot. It'll send out buses to fulfill our bus routes, and it's just a matter of making bus routes, and then the buses will get sent out. So before we end, I'd like to place maybe one bus route and call it a day. I think we have this nice motion going through the heart of our city over here in this direction, and I think our bus will kind of do an opposite thing where it might circulate kind of in this direction. So that way folks have nice opportunities to move between modes of transit. So I think I see a nice main road, which is this road right here. it connects our two city parks. So if I maybe focus it around that and then bring it over here, I think that would be kind of a smart move. Though I am not loving the traffic pattern I'm seeing over here, just because there's quite a bit of waiting. So I'm really hesitant to add in a bus route that makes people wait over there. What are some things we can do to relieve that? You know, I could extend this collector out, which would be kind of awkward and weird. I could make a local road connection to it, or I could additionally provide another, local road connection over here. I don't know if any of those are super viable. I don't know how to fix that, but I'm certainly not going to add in a bus route along that kind of path. So another thing I could do is maybe just choose a location that's a little bit more central and doesn't really mess with this area too much. Or maybe I could build a bus route within this area itself. Since we already have a tram line over here, I think I'm going to stick with just building a bus route throughout here. So I'm going to work to plop that down right now. And the reason I'm putting a stop right here in particular is because we have this nice path connection, and that will give folks an opportunity to transfer between tram and bus, which I think we want to encourage. And we'll definitely do the same thing on the opposite side of the road as well. And we'll do the same route, but in reverse. I'm not super creative, so I'm going to stick with the old naming convention and call this the Old Town Loop. And the Old Town Loop in reverse. We'll go with that. It looks like we're going to have 5 vehicles be sent out. I think that'll be fine. We'll revisit this to see if we have any problems in the future, but I think that'll be okay. And I'm interested to see. Yeah, cool. We have our bus depot sending out buses. We have 10 buses in use, and yeah, they're doing their thing. So I'm pretty happy with that. How are we on garbage? We're at 10%. Okay, I think we're going to keep doing this episode until we reach 0 and kind of call it a day after that. So there's still pollution. It's going to upset people, but there's a hospital and a community pool nearby, which will help with overall healthcare. So I'm tempted to maybe consider placing down some residences in there. Other things we can consider, which I don't think we've done quite yet, are deal with elder care. We do have elder care, great. And childcare, they're both in that area. So I'm tempted to maybe place down healthcare, elder care and childcare in this area as well. And we've got kind of a nice area going on with the hospital and the university. So I think adding in the child care and elder care over here would be a smart move. So yeah, I really like the idea of the elder care being over here. And let's just top things off with a cemetery. The reason I say that is we are... Well, we probably don't need a cemetery just yet. We will unlock the ability to process dead bodies at 17,000. So we're a ways away from that. So we're almost definitely going to need a cemetery before we reach that milestone. So I'm going to pull the trigger on putting one right there. And it might be kind of morbid having a cemetery right across from the hospital, but whatever. I think that'll have to work. I like the idea of having all of those uses right nearby. So let me just triple check. Yeah, I think we can just start to get away with placing some, and we won't go past, what's this, Smithson Street. So I think I'm going to stick with low density residential in a lot of areas, like over here. But maybe in this pocket over here, we can actually start to put a little bit of high density residential. Yeah, let's give that a try. This can be a little bit of a denser part of town. It doesn't need to be, skyscrapers. And in fact, we will prohibit that. In our city planning, we can set a high-rise ban. Just kidding, that's at 11,000. So when we get to 11,000, what we can do is explicitly prohibit across the city, we can prohibit buildings from being beyond a certain height, which is something that we want to do in this area. I don't like the idea of having, large skyscrapers in this part of town. I don't think that would be appropriate. I think it's fine to have, this area be a little bit more densely populated, but we don't want to go crazy. And I'm happy because this will really, really address that residential demand that we've been seeing, and we can even place some commercial down here. And I think that will take care of a lot of our need, and once this goes away, we can maybe put some low density residential in here. We're at 2% full. Do we have any glaring problems with health? It doesn't look like we have huge problems with health being bad in this area. The hospitals are going to give those folks a nice boost. So even though there's some lingering pollution, it's not the end of the world. That wouldn't, that mechanic wouldn't work in real life. We would definitely not want to place residences in a polluted area. But in the game, proximity to the hospital and other healthcare uses is a good thing. So we're kind of right on the edge, gambling a little bit, but that will definitely clean up, and I'm okay with that. And just like that, our second landfill site is done emptying. So we'll delete it, and we will relocate all of our dirty uses. So I want a few of the incineration plants over here. I like the idea of having a recycling center. Actually, maybe it pollutes, so we'll keep it over here. I like the idea of a recycling center over here as well. And what do we have left? With a processing capacity of 48,000, what is our need? We can get rid of a few of those. So even after deleting those, we are still quite a bit over in terms of processing capacity. So, hey, I think this is a good time to maybe turn one of those off. So we'll keep the building, but we're not paying for upkeep, and we've got a lot of room to grow. So when we start to see garbage issues, we'll just turn that one on, and I think that'll be more than sufficient. So let me just do one final checkup on this area to make sure that we have the city services we need. Because this is so polluted and it's going to take a while for it to clear up, I'm not going to touch that area for now, and we'll have to get to that in the next episode. But, garbage collection is looking good. Our healthcare is looking good. Death care, child care, and elder care, I think is good. We might be able to place more in the future, but I think for now that's fine. Our fire coverage is pretty poor. We have the helicopter and a small firehouse and a small firehouse. I'm going to upgrade. Well, what I'm going to do is, instead of upgrading, I think we should consider placing a large fire station right there, and then potentially relocating this one over here a little bit. Still good road access, but it's a little bit tucked away. And I think that spreads things out a little bit. Maybe we can additionally place, over by our industry area, we can additionally place a firehouse. And that'll help level up the buildings and take care of some stuff. Regarding police coverage, I think we're in an okay spot. Over here, I'm noticing I built this directly on the collector. I don't think that was such a wise move. I'm going to move that off of the collector, even though it means destroying that path, which I will add back right now. And I'll rezone. That way we're just not going to see police cars stop directly on the collector. They'll take this road and stop over here. That'll be better for traffic flow. But we do have that police station there. Our jail's capacity is looking good, though I do think we could have a police station, again, kind of like the firehouse, a little bit more located and tucked into this neighborhood. Our education. We've got pretty okay high school coverage. Elementary coverage is actually looking decent. University's great. And regarding transit, we're in a good spot where folks are using our transit system. It's not backed up. And our trams are seeing use as well. And then finally, if we look at the entertainment values, all of our city is looking pretty good. We could use some entertainment over here, so I will place some stuff. Maybe not a large park with trees, but maybe a large playground, and maybe even a unique building, something that will draw some attention. That's going to cause a lot of noise. Meteorite Park. That'll give a decent little boost to this neighborhood area, and might be something that people are interested in seeing. Can I add that there? No. So I'll add Meteorite Park right here. And I think that will give this area the entertainment boost that it needs. That'll help. We'll take care of that in time. And to close, I do want to check out the land value. And yeah, that land value is really just skyrocketing. That's thanks to a lot of the improvements we made. The fire stations, the public transit, the police stations that we placed, the hospital, the cemetery, all of those things are definitely contributing to the high land value. So much so that this kind of core right here is a super hot spot for value. So I'm excited about how that part of town has grown. So today we took care of quite a bit. This area is no longer a dump. It's kind of an exciting, valuable place to live, and people are really enjoying it. When the pollution clears up, we'll take advantage of this space over here and just continue to make progress on our town. I don't know what we're going to do next episode, but it will surely be something interesting. We might start building a new neighborhood entirely, or maybe tackle one of the parks, maybe a zoo or a nature reserve. I'm thinking, maybe building off of the deltas or these wetlands would be really cool for a nature reserve. So we will definitely explore that in a future episode. To end today's episode, I thought it'd be really neat to have a brief city tour by following around our tram. So thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for more content.